Hello adventurers, it is I, Solos Venture, and welcome to my YouTube channel. So for today, we will be continuing my October series. And the title of the October series, it is called Lean on Mystery, quote unquote, not monsters. So let me just give you the principle behind the title of the series. So if you have been listening to this topic, I am focusing on how to add the element of surprise to your solo session. Because as a PC and a GM, you are constantly switching between those two mindsets. And it could be very hard to keep up with that element of surprise because there are times when you're playing, you feel like you basically, quote unquote, know everything, what's going on, right? So we are going to be focusing on different ways that you can add the element of mystery to your sessions. So the first one, we talked about not mapping everything out on a map, especially if you're exploring a dungeon room, right? Like you don't need to roll for every single thing that is in the room. You basically have to roll once you get to that point. And now, point 2, I have been encouraging you guys to use your senses and why using your senses can add so much immersion to your session. I feel like if you're able to use your senses, you are describing something strange and let that like unknown and mystery kind of like linger. Like you don't need to roll exactly what that thing is. So for that example, I gave the idea of we have our dungeoneer here. He's exploring the room and he looks down at his feet and he sees green goop. So instead of saying he walks into a puddle of green goop, you can probably use your senses and try to see if what is in the room, like what is my PC feeling? Does he smelling anything odd? So that is a way for you to use your senses and to not really roll for what exactly is that thing in the room. So now for point 3, we will be talking about how to add a tension die to your session. So for today's imagery, we have here a parasite. So this is a little alien parasite that has entered into your bloodstream, and you need to get help quick and get that parasite out of your system. So for you to get it out of your system, we will need a tension die. So let's say I have a D10, and if this rolls to a 1 or a 2, then this will go down to a D8, which will be this. And then once we hit a 1 to a 2, then we will go to a D6, another 1 to a 2, then we have a D4. So as this is going down, so this is our tension die kind of, I guess, scale. So as this is going down, this parasite is in your system. Once it hits a 1 to a 2 on a D4, you are dead. So we basically have this amount of time to get help and get treatment. So that is an example of how you can add tension to your solo session. So the principle is a tension die. It helps add obviously tension, but also pressure, time. When something goes bad, you roll the tension die to see if that particular thing, it could be anything that you want, that particular thing will happen. So number 1, you choose a starting die. So for example, I just did a D10, a D8, a D6, and a D4. And then you roll for a 1 to a 2, you just keep moving the dice down the scale here, right? So that is an example of the tension die. And now for number 2, you have to choose when you would want to roll the tension die. You have to think about, is it every time that I enter a new room? Or is it every time I fail a skill check? Or is it every time after a combat phase? So it's up to you what you want this tension die to track. So for my example with this image, I wanted to track how much time I still have left to get myself help, get myself treatment before I die on a 1d4. So it's up to you what you want to track. Another example would be for my session, if you have followed my one-shot adventure for Morkborg, A Sinner's Silver. So my witch, Eldara, was being hunted down by a witch hunter, but this witch hunter didn't immediately want to attack. So I had a tension die to track when he would want to attack Eldara. So on a 1 or a 2, it would go down the tension die like scale here, and then a 1 or 2 on a d4, that was when he started to feel really aggressive, and that was his moment of wanting to attack Eldara. That is an example of a tension die from my session. That is number 2. So when you would roll the tension die, you have to check. And so for Eldara, it would be every time she is exploring like a new area. That was when I would want to roll the tension die to see when the witch hunter was going to attack her. Now, number 3, when the last die comes, be prepared. So you have to figure out beforehand what you want your tension die to track. Is it an infection? So for example, our parasite here, is there a storm coming? Or is it, like with Eldara, is there a hunter? So you have to figure out what you want it to track. And you could have multiple tension dies. So this is a really great way for you to have that surprise, that randomness of when that particular event, that particular NPC or monster or whatever comes to your PC. So what it tracks. So for the tension die, it can track many different things. It can track danger, it can track mental strain, it can also track time. So for example, for my one-shot adventure for Eldara, I didn't end up doing this, but I could have had a tension die to track when the gods were getting impatient with her and when they wanted to attack her, for example. So this tension die can kind of track the gods' patience, and maybe on a 1 to a 2 on a d4, that is when they strike Eldara. So that is an example. Another example would be mental strain. You are playing an adventure where your PC is in a very stressful kind of environment, perhaps. Maybe they are navigating a maze, and you can easily get lost and go crazy in the maze. And so you can track their sanity levels using a tension die. You can also use it for danger. So maybe the particular area that you're exploring, it is safe, but maybe on a 1 to a 2 on a d4, starting from d10 all the way to a d4, that is when a mob of monsters come and ambush the PC. I'm going to give you guys now examples of different ways systems kind of use tension dice. The first one I want to cover, Caer Nathalis. So this is a dungeon crawl survival kind of game. And there is this particular check called the layer check. So as you are exploring the domain and you're mapping it out, you have to do a layer check kind of roll. So each time you are in a new room, you make the layer check in order to find out if that is where the overseer is. So the overseer is kind of the big bad guy that you want to defeat. And this is done via the usage die, where the starting die is a d12. And so once you reach the last stage, so meaning if you roll a 1 to a 2 on a d4, then that means the room that you are currently in, that is the overseer's room. That is obviously a way to add tension, but it also kind of gives you surprise because you don't know which room where the big overseer guy is. So that is an example of how the tension die is used in Caer Nathalis. And then the Morkborg example, I already gave the example of Eldara. So that is how I use a tension die in my own Morkborg games. And then for here, we have Bloodborg. You are being hunted. And so your hunter, depending on how you are organizing your own solo session, the tension die is tracking proximity. So they start at a d20 all the way down to a d4. So that means your hunter is getting closer and closer. And then once a 1, 2, or 2 is hit on a d4, your hunter has found you and he is ready to attack. And you can see that that is being tracked over here on the sheet here. So the hunter, you have to watch out for when the hunter is ready to attack you. So it's really up to you when you want to, or how you want to like use this. But basically it's like every night. So every time you want to sleep, that is when you have to roll for the proximity tension die for your hunter. And then now we have here the Walking Dead universe. And the really cool thing I love about this is we have the stress die. So stress dies are a little different than a tension die. In the Walking Dead universe, you have these things called walkers. So they're basically humans that turned into zombies, okay? And when you're using your skills in The Walking Dead, you have to use a bunch of d6 dice. And so there's this thing called stress dice. In any tense situations, you will gain stress points. And so every time you gain a stress point, you have to add a stress die to any skill roll that you are making. And if you roll a 1 on a stress die, that means rolling a walker. So that means a few different things in the rules here. It's possible for you to succeed if you do roll a 6 on a stress die, then you're good. But if you do roll a 1 on a stress die, that actually forces the threat level to increase. So an example of that, the threat level, meaning you can have more and more walkers show up basically. The threat level can be increased in different ways. So rolling a walker on a stress die and messing up, that will be a way for you to increase the threat level. So in that sense, it adds more tension to the campaign or the adventure or whatever. That is something that I'm really excited to use in my own solo sessions when I eventually play The Walking Dead. I can't wait to kind of see how the stress die and the threat level are like correlated. So yeah, I'm really excited to try that sometime. But we've played that with a group of like our friends, and it was so much fun and very stressful because we were definitely stressed if we increased the threat level there by rolling a 1 on the stress die. But anyways, so that is one way for you to add tension. So it is not a tension die, but it does add tension and unknown to your adventure because you never know when more of these walkers are going to show up, right? So that is an example. So yeah, that really includes all the examples that I have for using a tension die and why using it can be really helpful for your adventure and give yourself a little more randomness. So that is it for today's video. But let me know if you are a fan of the tension die. I feel like a lot of us solo players love using the tension die. It really adds so much to a session. But that is it for part 3 of Lean on Mystery, Not Monsters. Well, that is it for today's video adventures. I hope this video was helpful. And of course, feel free to leave like any questions or comments. Feel free to give advice as well of different things that have worked for you in your session. Well, that is it for today. Until next time.